A day of anticipation. The sun began its slow ascent over Maplewood, spilling warm golden rays across the quiet suburban streets. Jason Evans stirred from his slumber, the gentle glow filtering through his bedroom window coaxing him awake. As consciousness enveloped him, a grin spread across his face. Today was a special day, a day he had looked forward to with unbridled enthusiasm. Today, he would drive his grandmother, Mrs. Evans, on a much-anticipated trip to the nearby city of Millbrook. At 16, Jason was a bright, charismatic teenager known for his kindness and respect for others. He stood tall, his lean frame hinting at the athleticism he enjoyed through countless hours of basketball with friends. His deep ebony skin contrasted beautifully with his warm brown eyes, which sparkled with an easygoing charm. He often lit up any room he entered, his infectious laughter echoing long after he had departed. Those around him often remarked that he could charm his way out of nearly any situation. But Jason was simply a young man who carried himself with integrity and honor. He rolled out of bed, the coolness of the hardwood floor sending a shiver up his spine, and ambled over to the mirror. There he took a moment to appreciate the reflection that stared back at him, a bright-eyed young man full of dreams and aspirations. His room, adorned with posters of basketball legends and motivational quotes, echoed his ambition to excel both on the court and in life. He caught sight of a framed photograph on his nightstand. It captured a cherished moment between him and Mrs. Evans from last year's birthday celebration, both of them beaming with joy. Though they shared different skin tones, his dark complexion next to her fair one, their smiles told a story of a bond that transcended the boundaries of color and race. Mrs. Evans wasn't just his grandmother in name. She was the embodiment of unconditional love and support. She had been his guiding light through life's challenges, having adopted him after his father, her foster son, had passed away years ago. In a world that often seemed overwhelming, she provided him with stability, warmth, and wisdom. With thoughts of their planned adventure swirling in his mind, Jason hurried to get ready. After throwing on a favorite t-shirt emblazoned with the phrase "Dream Big," he made his way down the stairs, drawn by the mouth-watering aroma of bacon sizzling in the kitchen. As he entered the cozy kitchen, he found Mrs. Evans bustling about, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, an apron tied around her waist. His parents, who had instilled in him a strong sense of right and wrong, were seated at the table, sharing light-hearted banter over the morning news. "Good morning, sleepyhead," his mother chirped, ruffling his hair affectionately as he passed her. "Morning, Mom," Jason replied, planting a quick kiss on her cheek. He turned to his grandmother, her eyes glinting with excitement as she turned to face him. "Are you ready for our big adventure today, Jason?" she asked, her voice warm and inviting. "You bet I am, Grandma. I can't wait." Jason beamed, unable to hide his enthusiasm. "First things first, though. Sit down and eat your breakfast. I can't have you fainting at the wheel," she teased, her laughter filling the room. Jason settled into his seat, and as they ate, the table became a flurry of conversation. His father shared a story from his own youth about a road trip gone wrong, and everyone erupted in laughter. Mrs. Evans chimed in with her own tales of adventure, recounting her youthful escapades with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. Jason listened intently, soaking in every word. The stories reminded him of the rich tapestry of life they had woven together, full of laughter, challenges, and lessons learned. After breakfast, as the family cleared the table, Jason couldn't help but feel a wave of anticipation wash over him. He had just received his learner's permit 3 weeks ago and was eager to practice driving. The idea of being behind the wheel, especially with his grandmother by his side, filled him with a sense of freedom and responsibility. "Remember, son," his father said, a mock-serious expression on his face as he handed Jason the car keys. "Driving is a big responsibility. You've got precious cargo with you today. Keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel." "I know, Dad. I'll be extra careful, I promise," Jason replied, his tone earnest as he accepted the keys. With a spring in his step, he led his grandmother to the family car, a reliable blue sedan that had seen countless family outings. The vehicle held memories of laughter, tears, and everything in between, and today it would be the chariot for their new adventure. As they climbed into the car, Jason felt a rush of exhilaration. "Okay, Grandma, let's do this," he exclaimed, starting the engine. The hum of the car was like music to his ears, a harmonious blend of excitement and nervousness. Mrs. Evans settled into her seat, adjusting her seatbelt and glancing at Jason with a reassuring smile. "Just take it easy, sweetheart. We've got all the time in the world," she said, her voice calm and steady, soothing Jason's racing heart. As they pulled out of the driveway, Jason felt a swell of pride. He navigated the familiar streets of Maplewood, waving at neighbors as they passed by. The trees lining the road were dressed in vibrant autumn colors, their leaves a tapestry of reds and yellows that danced in the gentle breeze. He felt the warmth of the sun on his face, a reminder that today was a day to be cherished. Their conversation flowed effortlessly as they drove. Jason shared stories about school, his friends, and his dreams of playing basketball at the collegiate level. In return, Mrs. Evans shared her own stories of resilience, love, and the importance of standing up for oneself. Each story was a thread in the fabric of their lives, weaving them closer together. "Jason, you know the world can be a tough place," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "But you have to remember that kindness and respect can take you far. People will see your heart before they see your skin." Jason nodded, her words resonating deeply. He understood the weight of her advice, having witnessed the complexities of life as a young Black man in a world often shadowed by prejudice and misunderstanding. Mrs. Evans's wisdom became a guiding principle for him, a reminder of the strength that resided within him. As they drove on, the excitement of the day ahead pulsed through Jason. They planned to explore the shops in Millbrook, have lunch at a cozy cafe, and perhaps even stop by a park to enjoy the crisp fall air. The day was ripe with possibilities, and Jason was determined to make the most of it. Just as they were about to reach the edge of Maplewood, a police car suddenly appeared behind them. Its lights flashed ominously, sending a chill down Jason's spine. He glanced nervously at Mrs. Evans, who remained composed, her eyes encouraging him to stay calm. "Pull over, Jason," she instructed gently, her voice steady. "Okay, Grandma," he replied, his heart racing as he maneuvered the car to the side of the road. He parked, turned off the engine, and took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside him. As the police officer approached the car, Jason felt a sense of unease. His mind raced with questions. Why were they being stopped? Had he done something wrong? Mrs. Evans, sensing his anxiety, reached out and placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Just stay calm, sweetheart. It's probably just a routine check," she whispered, her tone soothing. The officer, a tall man with a stern expression, leaned down to peer through the driver's side window. "Good afternoon. Do you know why I stopped you?" he asked, his voice gruff. Jason shook his head, his palms clammy against the steering wheel. "No, sir," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. The officer's gaze shifted to Mrs. Evans. "Can I see your license and registration?" Jason fumbled through the glove compartment, retrieving the documents with shaking hands. He handed them over to the officer, who scrutinized them with a frown. "Are you aware that there's been a robbery in the area?" the officer questioned, his tone shifting. Jason's heart sank. No, sir. I didn't know. We're just on our way to Millbrook. The officer's eyes narrowed as he continued. Your vehicle matches the description of a car involved in that robbery. I need you to step out of the car, please. Confusion washed over Jason. What? No, I didn't do anything wrong. His voice trembled, disbelief seeping in. Out of the car, the officer repeated firmly, and Jason's world tilted as he complied, stepping onto the pavement, his stomach churning. Jason, it's okay, Mrs. Evans urged, her voice steady yet laced with concern. Just do what he says. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling of dread that enveloped him. He glanced at his grandmother, who watched with a worried expression, and a knot of fear tightened in his chest. The officer instructed him to turn around, and as he did, the cold steel of handcuffs closed around his wrists, the sound of clicking metal echoing in his ears. As he was led to the police car, the gravity of the situation hit him. How had this ordinary, a nightmare unfolds? Jason's heart raced as the officer escorted him to the police car, the handcuffs biting into his wrists. He felt as if he were moving in slow motion, each step echoing the mounting fear and confusion swirling within him. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the pavement, but all he could see was the dread creeping into his chest like an unwelcome intruder. "Grandma," he called out, panic lacing his voice. He turned to look back at Mrs. Evans, who sat in the passenger seat, her expression a mix of concern and disbelief. The officer was already signaling for another squad car, and the unsettling reality of the situation settled over Jason like a thick fog. "Everything is going to be okay, Jason," Mrs. Evans shouted back, her voice firm and unwavering, despite the tremor he could detect beneath it. "Just stay calm. We'll figure this out." But as he stood there, feeling exposed and vulnerable, Jason couldn't shake the sensation that something much bigger was unfolding around him. He glanced at the patrol car parked nearby, its lights still flashing, casting a harsh glow on the scene. For a brief moment, he felt as though the world around him had distorted into something surreal, a cruel twist of fate that he couldn't comprehend. As the second officer arrived, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, she exchanged a few hushed words with the first officer. Jason could hear snippets of their conversation, phrases like suspect and matching description. The implication hung heavy in the air. He had become the embodiment of a stereotype, one that had haunted him ever since he could remember. "Why are you doing this?" Jason asked, his voice shaky as he tried to maintain his composure. "I haven't done anything wrong." He looked at the officers, desperately searching for empathy in their eyes. But their expressions remained cold, unyielding. "Just answer our questions," the female officer replied, her tone clipped. "Where were you coming from, and where are you headed?" "I'm just driving my grandmother to Millbrook for some shopping," Jason explained, his voice gaining a hint of defiance. "We were just." "Save it. We'll figure it out at the station," she interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. Before he knew it, Jason was placed in the back seat of the police cruiser, the door slamming shut behind him with a finality that sent a jolt of panic through him. The interior felt cold and sterile, the plastic seats a stark contrast to the warmth of his grandmother's car. He felt like a criminal, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. From his vantage point in the car, he could see Mrs. Evans sitting alone in the passenger seat, her hands clasped together tightly in her lap. She was trying to maintain her composure, but the worry etched on her face was unmistakable. Jason's heart ached at the sight. He hated that she had to witness this injustice, that her day had been ruined by an unfortunate misunderstanding. Moments later, the officer slid into the driver's seat, and the cruiser lurched into motion. The city of Maplewood faded into the distance, and Jason stared out the window, watching the world blur by. Everything felt surreal. The vibrant colors of the trees and houses began to merge into a dull haze. Fear threatened to overwhelm him, but he took a deep breath, reminding himself of his grandmother's words, "Stay calm." After a short drive, they arrived at the local police station. The cruiser parked with a sudden jolt, and Jason felt the adrenaline coursing through him. The officer stepped out and opened his door, instructing him to step out as well. Reluctantly, he complied, the handcuffs still clasped around his wrists. Inside the station, the atmosphere shifted from the bright daylight outside to a sterile fluorescent-lit room that felt cold and unwelcoming. Jason was led through a series of hallways, passing various officers and civilians who cast curious glances his way. The whispers and murmurs only added to his mounting anxiety. They stopped at a small interrogation room, the walls adorned with dull gray paint that seemed to absorb any warmth or comfort. The officer motioned for him to take a seat at a metal table, and Jason hesitated for a moment before sitting down, the hard chair offering no solace. The officers remained standing, their expressions unreadable as they began their questioning. "Tell us your name," the female officer instructed, her pen poised over a notepad. "Jason Evans," he replied, his voice steady despite the situation. "Your age?" She continued, jotting down notes. 16, he answered, feeling a knot form in his stomach. They asked him a series of questions about his whereabouts, his activities, and his family. Jason answered them as truthfully as he could, trying to maintain his composure. But with each question, he could feel the weight of their suspicion bearing down on him. The officer continued to flip through the notes, occasionally looking up to scrutinize him, as if searching for a crack in his facade. "Do you have any criminal history?" the male officer asked, his tone abrupt. "No, I've never been in trouble with the law," Jason replied, the indignation bubbling just beneath the surface. "I'm a good kid. I just want to go home." "Is that so?" the officer replied, a hint of skepticism in his voice. "You realize that the description of the suspect involved in the robbery closely matches your appearance, don't you?" Jason felt a surge of frustration. "But I'm not the suspect. I didn't do anything," he protested, the anger rising within him. "You're making a mistake." "Calm down," the female officer snapped, her patience wearing thin. "We're just trying to get to the bottom of this." Jason took a deep breath, fighting against the swell of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I understand, but you have to believe me. I was with my grandmother the whole time. She can vouch for me." Just then, Mrs. Evans was escorted into the room, her face a mixture of concern and determination. Jason felt a wave of relief wash over him at the sight of her. "Jason," she exclaimed, her voice warm yet tinged with worry. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Grandma. I don't understand why this is happening," he replied, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Mrs. Evans turned to the officers, her gaze steady and unwavering. "My grandson is innocent. He has never been in trouble before, and he certainly wouldn't be involved in something like this. He was with me the entire time." The male officer exchanged glances with his partner before turning back to Jason. "We're still conducting our investigation, ma'am. If you could just give us a moment." "Of course, but I want to be here for my grandson," Mrs. Evans insisted, her voice firm. The officers shared a reluctant look, but allowed her to stay, recognizing the strength of her presence. As they continued the questioning, Jason felt a renewed sense of hope with his grandmother by his side. She represented everything that was good and right in his life. The love they shared was a fortress against the storm of uncertainty that surrounded him. After what felt like an eternity, the officers finally concluded their questioning. "We'll be in touch," the female officer said curtly, making a few final notes before leaving the room. As the door closed behind them, Jason and Mrs. Evans sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation still heavy in the air. "Jason," Mrs. Evans began, her voice soft but resolute, "I want you to remember that this doesn't define you. You are a good person, and this will pass." Jason nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. "I know, Grandma, but it just feels so unfair. I didn't do anything wrong." "I know it feels that way, sweetheart," she replied, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "But sometimes life throws us curveballs. What matters is how we respond to them. We'll get through this together." Her words, imbued with wisdom and strength, filled Jason with a sense of determination. He realized that he couldn't let this experience extinguish his spirit. He would fight to prove his innocence and show the world who he truly was. As they waited in that stark room, Jason could feel the world outside moving on, but he was determined not to let this moment define him. It was just one chapter in his life, a chapter that would ultimately reveal the strength of his character and the unbreakable bond he shared with his grandmother. Just then, the door swung open and another officer entered, interrupting their moment. "Jason, you're being released," he said, a hint of relief in his voice. "We've reviewed some additional information, and we believe there's been a misunderstanding." Jason's heart leaped with hope, but he remained cautious. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling with anticipation. The officer continued, "We have footage from a nearby store that shows you and your grandmother leaving your house at the time of the robbery. You're in the clear." Jason's relief was palpable as he turned to his grandmother, who smiled brightly, tears of joy shimmering in her eyes. "I knew it, Jason. I knew they would see the truth." As they walked out of the station together, the reality of what had just transpired began to settle in. The injustices that had just unfolded felt heavy on his heart, and although he was being released, Jason knew this experience would linger with him for a long time. Once outside, he turned. Reflections in the aftermath. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow on the streets of Maplewood as Jason and Mrs. Evans emerged from the police station. The oppressive weight of anxiety that had engulfed them was finally beginning to lift, but a lingering unease remained. They stepped onto the sidewalk, the fresh air a welcome reprieve after the stifling atmosphere of the interrogation room. Jason took a moment to collect himself, inhaling deeply as he scanned their surroundings. Everything seemed so normal. Children playing in yards, neighbors chatting, and cars passing by, as if the world hadn't been turned upside down just moments before. It felt surreal. He had been a suspect in a crime, treated as if he were guilty, and now he was free, yet the experience had left its mark. "Let's get to Millbrook," Mrs. Evans said, her voice warm and reassuring, though Jason could hear the tremor of concern still lingering within it. "We've got an adventure waiting for us." "Yeah," he replied, a small smile forming as he reached for her hand. He squeezed it gently, grateful for her unwavering support. "Let's go." They climbed into the car, the familiar interior offering a sense of comfort that felt desperately needed. As Jason turned the key in the ignition, the engine purred to life, a comforting sound that momentarily banished the memories of the interrogation. But as they pulled away from the police station, Jason's mind churned with questions and lingering doubts. What if something like that happens again? He wondered aloud, casting a sideways glance at Mrs. Evans. What if they still think I did something wrong? Mrs. Evans turned to him, her expression softening. "Jason, remember that this experience doesn't define you. You are a good young man, and you have the love of your family and community behind you. If anything, this will only make you stronger." "Stronger," he echoed, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted within him. The world felt different now, as if the innocence of his teenage years had been stripped away, exposing the harsh realities of life that he had been sheltered from until now. As they drove toward Millbrook, Jason felt the need to voice his concerns. "Grandma, what if I get pulled over again? What if they don't believe me?" The question spilled out in a torrent, fueled by the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "Listen to me," she said, her voice steady yet gentle. "If you're ever in a situation where you feel unfairly treated, you must remain calm. You have to stand tall and remember who you are. Your character and integrity will shine through, even in the darkest times." Jason nodded, though the uncertainty still clung to him like a heavy fog. As they entered the city, the bustling streets of Millbrook came alive with activity. The vibrant storefronts lined the sidewalks, their colorful displays inviting shoppers inside. The aroma of fresh pastries wafted through the air, a welcome distraction from the lingering shadows of the morning. "Let's stop by that cafe we love," Mrs. Evans suggested, pointing to a quaint little place adorned with flower boxes. "Great idea," Jason replied, his spirits lifting slightly. They parked the car and walked toward the cafe, the gentle autumn breeze ruffling their clothes and stirring up the fallen leaves that carpeted the sidewalk. Inside the cafe, the warm ambience embraced them like a familiar hug. The sound of laughter and clinking dishes filled the air, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of baked goods. Jason felt his anxiety begin to dissipate, replaced by the comforting rhythm of everyday life. They found a cozy table by the window, and as they settled in, Jason couldn't help but admire the comforting atmosphere around them. A barista was skillfully crafting a latte, steam rising in delicate wisps, while a group of friends chatted animatedly at the next table. It reminded him of the laughter and joy he shared with friends before today's chaos intruded on his life. As they perused the menu, Mrs. Evans looked over at Jason, her eyes filled with warmth. "So what do you want to order, young man? You deserve something special after what you've been through." "Maybe a chocolate croissant," he suggested, a grin breaking across his face. "And a hot chocolate. Excellent choices. I'll have the same," she chuckled, her laughter like music that lightened the weight in his chest. They placed their orders, and as they waited, Jason's thoughts wandered. He thought of the strange twist of fate that had befallen him and how quickly life could change in an instant. The incident had shaken him to his core, forcing him to confront realities he had previously been shielded from. "Grandma," he began, his voice thoughtful, "do you think this is something that will stick with me forever? Like a shadow?" Mrs. Evans considered this for a moment, her expression contemplative. "I think it will, Jason. But shadows can remind us of the light as well. They can help us see the world differently, understand the struggles others face, and teach us empathy." "Empathy," he echoed, pondering the weight of her words. "I guess I never really thought about it that way." Before they could delve deeper into the conversation, their order arrived. The barista placed the steaming mugs and flaky pastries before them, the rich aroma enveloping them in a comforting embrace. "Thank you," Jason said, his smile returning as he took a sip of the hot chocolate, its warmth spreading through him like a cozy blanket. He looked at Mrs. Evans, who was already savoring a bite of her croissant. "This is wonderful," she declared, her eyes sparkling with delight. "I think it's the little things in life that truly matter, don't you?" "Yeah, I do," Jason agreed, feeling the warmth of the moment wash over him. They chatted and laughed, the shadows of the morning slowly fading into the background. For the first time since the incident, he felt a sense of normalcy return. After finishing their treats, they decided to stroll through a nearby park, where the vibrant fall colors danced in the breeze. The leaves crunched beneath their feet as they walked, and Jason felt lighter with each step. He looked around, soaking in the beauty of the day and the laughter of children playing nearby. As they wandered, he shared his dreams of basketball and his aspirations for the future, ignited by the newfound resolve to not let fear dictate his life. "I want to make it to college and play ball," he said, determination shining in his eyes. "I want to show people that I can succeed, no matter what they think." Mrs. Evans nodded, her pride evident in her expression. "And you will, Jason. Just remember that the path to success isn't always smooth. Sometimes we must navigate obstacles and challenges to reach our goals. Each experience, good or bad, shapes us into who we are meant to be." Her words resonated deeply with him. Jason realized that while the morning had been a painful chapter in his life, it was just that, a chapter. It wouldn't define him. It would merely contribute to the person he was becoming. The lessons learned from this experience would serve as a foundation for his future, building resilience and strength within him. As they continued their walk, they found a bench nestled beneath a grand oak tree, its leaves a brilliant mosaic of red and gold. They sat down, and Jason leaned back, allowing himself to relax in the moment. "Thank you for being here with me, Grandma," he said quietly, looking out at the park filled with laughter and life. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Mrs. Evans smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'm always here for you, Jason, no matter what. Family means standing together, especially in the face of adversity." As they sat in companionable silence, Jason felt a sense of clarity wash over him. The road ahead would not be without challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on. He would take his grandmother's wisdom with him and carry the lessons learned from today's ordeal into his future. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow across the park. Jason leaned his head back against the bench and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of laughter and the rustling leaves envelop him. With renewed determination, he opened his eyes and turned to his grandmother. "Let's make some new memories today," he declared, his voice brimming with excitement. Mrs. Evans chuckled, her laughter brightening the air around them. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. What do you have in mind?" "Let's explore the shops. I want to find you something special," he suggested, the spark of enthusiasm igniting in his chest. Her face lit up at the thought. "I would love that, Jason. I think we should find a little something for you, too. How about that new basketball you've been eyeing?" Jason grinned. "Deal, let's go." As they made their way back to the car, Jason felt lighter than he had all day. The earlier anxiety was replaced with a sense of purpose. He understood that challenges would continue to arise, but he was no longer afraid. With his grandmother by his side, he felt invincible, ready to take on the world one step at a time. Together, they drove back into the heart of Millbrook, where new adventures awaited them. The day that had begun in uncertainty was transforming into a beautiful tapestry of love, resilience, and new beginnings. The shadows of the morning. The journey forward. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden hue across the streets of Millbrook as Jason and Mrs. Evans pulled into the parking lot of their favorite shopping district. The vibrant storefronts beckoned them with promises of treasures waiting to be discovered. Jason felt a sense of excitement bubbling within him, a welcome contrast to the turmoil of earlier. He could hardly wait to explore the shops, envisioning a fun-filled afternoon that would help wash away the remnants of the morning's chaos. "Let's see what we can find," Mrs. Evans exclaimed as they exited the car, her enthusiasm infectious. Jason smiled, feeling the bond between them strengthen as they ventured into the bustling crowd. They meandered through the shops, the sound of laughter and chatter creating a lively backdrop. The scent of fresh flowers from a nearby florist wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of baked goods from a bakery that had just opened its doors. Jason felt as though they had stepped into a vibrant tapestry of life, each thread rich with stories and dreams. "Look at that." Mrs. Evans pointed toward a quaint little shop with an eclectic array of trinkets displayed in the window. The sign above the door read, "Curiosities and Wonders," and Jason felt drawn to it. "Let's check it out," he suggested, leading the way inside. The bell above the door chimed cheerily as they entered, and Jason was instantly enveloped in a world of colors and textures. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with unique items, handmade jewelry, vintage toys, and curious oddities from around the world. "This place is amazing," Jason exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. He wandered through the aisles, touching the various items with reverence. Each piece seemed to have its own story, and he felt a surge of creativity and imagination flowing through him. Mrs. Evans browsed nearby, her gaze dancing over the shelves. She picked up a small glass globe filled with glitter and a tiny model of a hot air balloon. "Oh, look at this, Jason. It reminds me of the time we went to that balloon festival last summer." Jason smiled at the memory. "Yeah, that was so much fun. We should do that again next year." As they continued to explore, Jason's eyes landed on a vintage basketball, worn but still rich with character. Its leather surface bore the scuffs and scratches of 1,000 games played, and he felt an instant connection to it. "Grandma, look at this," he called, holding it up with excitement. "That's a great find," she replied, moving closer to inspect it. "It looks like it has a lot of stories to tell." Jason turned the ball over in his hands, imagining all the young players who had dribbled and shot with it, pouring their dreams into the game. "I think I want to get it," he said, feeling a sense of resolve. "It feels like a piece of history." Mrs. Evans nodded in agreement. "Then let's get it. It'll be a great reminder of how far you've come and the journey ahead." After paying for the basketball and a few of Mrs. Evans' trinkets, they left the shop with their treasures in hand, the weight of the day's events starting to lift as they continued their adventure. Outside, the evening air was cool and refreshing, a welcome relief from the warmth of the shop. The golden hues of the sunset painted the sky in breathtaking shades of orange and pink, and Jason felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. "Thanks for today, Grandma. I really needed this." Mrs. Evans smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I think we both did. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to surround ourselves with joy and beauty." As they strolled along the street, they stumbled upon a small outdoor fair that had set up shop in a nearby park. Colorful lights strung between trees illuminated the area, and laughter rang out as families enjoyed the various attractions. "Look at that," Jason exclaimed, pointing toward a dunk tank where people were trying their hand at knocking down a target to dunk a participant into a pool of water. "We should give it a try. Who wants to take the plunge?" The attendant called out, grinning at the participants. "I do," Jason shouted, stepping forward, ready to take aim. The participant sitting above the tank grinned mischievously, and Jason felt a surge of competitive energy. He lined up his shot and threw the ball with all his might. The sound of the ball hitting the target echoed through the air, and the participant plummeted into the water with a loud splash. The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter, and Jason couldn't help but join in. He turned to Mrs. Evans, his laughter meh. "Why not?" Mrs. Evans said with a laugh, her spirit of adventure igniting. They made their way to the booth, and Jason's heart raced with excitement as he handed over a few tickets. Angling with hers. That was awesome. "Great shot, Jason," she said, her pride evident. "You've got quite the arm." They continued to enjoy the fair, sampling cotton candy and popcorn, reveling in the sweetness of the moment. For the first time since the morning's events, Jason felt a lightness in his heart. He was surrounded by joy and laughter, and he realized that life could still hold unexpected delights even after turmoil. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deeper hues, they found a quiet spot on a bench, taking a moment to watch the festivities unfold. Families strolled by, children raced past with glowing toys, and the sound of music filled the air, creating an atmosphere of pure celebration. "Do you remember the summer fairs when I was a kid?" Jason asked, leaning back on the bench, nostalgia washing over him. "We used to come here all the time." Mrs. Evans nodded, her eyes reflecting the warm memories. "Of course. You were always so full of energy, running from one game to another. You never wanted to leave until we had tried every single thing." "Yeah, and I always wanted to win the biggest stuffed animal." Jason chuckled, recalling the times he begged her to help him win prizes. "You did have quite the determination," she replied, laughter in her voice. "But more than that, you had the biggest heart. You cared about everyone and everything around you. Don't ever lose that, Jason. It's a rare gift." As the stars began to twinkle above them, Jason felt a sense of peace wash over him. The earlier chaos seemed distant, a mere shadow overshadowed by the warmth of love and the joys of the present moment. "Grandma," he said quietly, his voice reflective, "I know today was tough, but I think I'm starting to understand. Life can throw things at us that seem unfair or confusing, but it's up to us how we respond to them." Mrs. Evans smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're absolutely right, my dear. It's how we choose to face challenges that defines us. You've shown remarkable strength today, and I'm proud of you for that." Just then, the fair announced the beginning of a fireworks display, and Jason's attention snapped to the sky. Brilliant bursts of color illuminated the night, dazzling shapes blossoming against the dark canvas above. The crowd oohed and ah-ed in unison, and Jason felt his heart swell with wonder. "Look at that," he exclaimed, pointing at a particularly stunning explosion of blue and gold. "It's beautiful." "Yes, it is," Mrs. Evans replied, her eyes sparkling as she watched the display. "Just like life. Sometimes it can be chaotic and overwhelming, but amidst it all, there are moments of beauty that take our breath away." As they sat side by side, watching the fireworks light up the sky, Jason felt a deep sense of connection, not just to his grandmother, but to the world around him. He realized that while he couldn't control the events that had happened earlier, he could embrace the joy that came afterward. The final burst of fireworks exploded in a dazzling finale, showering the sky with shimmering sparks. The crowd erupted into applause, and Jason joined in, his heart full. "That was incredible," he exclaimed, turning to Mrs. Evans. "Just like you, Jason," she said, her eyes shining with love. "You have the power to light up the world around you." As the last of the fireworks faded away, Jason knew this day would be etched in his memory forever. It had taught him resilience, the importance of love, and the strength of family. He was determined to move forward, to embrace the future with hope and optimism, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would always have his grandmother by his side. As they made their way back to the car, Jason's heart brimmed with excitement for what lay ahead. He held the basketball tightly in his hands, a symbol of his passion and determination. Today had been a reminder of the importance of cherishing moments, both big and small. With a renewed sense of purpose, he looked at his grandmother and said, "Let's make a promise. No matter what happens, we'll always find a way to celebrate life together. We'll create memories, even in the toughest of times." Mrs. Evans smiled, her heart swelling with love for her grandson. "I promise, Jason. Together, we'll find joy, even in the most challenging moments." That's what family is for. As they drove home, the stars twinkling brightly above, Jason felt a sense of peace enveloping him. The journey had only just begun, but he was ready to face whatever came next, armed with love. New horizons. The morning sun filtered through the window of Jason's room, casting warm beams across the walls and illuminating the remnants of his life. Basketballs stacked in a corner, trophies from local tournaments lining the shelves, and posters of his favorite players plastered across the walls. But today felt different. It marked a turning point in his life, and he could feel the excitement humming beneath his skin. Jason awoke with a sense of purpose, eager to embrace the new day. The events of the previous day lingered in his mind, their lessons fresh and invigorating. He quickly changed into his basketball gear, the fabric comfortable and familiar, as he prepared to face the day with the same enthusiasm that had driven him to the fair. As he dashed down the stairs, he could hear Mrs. Evans in the kitchen, the comforting aroma of breakfast wafting through the air. She was flipping pancakes, her movements fluid and practiced, and Jason felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Good morning, sunshine," she called, her smile brightening the room. "Ready for some pancakes?" "Absolutely," he replied, plopping down at the table, where a stack of fluffy pancakes awaited him. "Thanks, Grandma. These look amazing." As they shared breakfast, Jason felt compelled to share his thoughts. "You know, after everything that happened, I've been thinking about how I can make a difference. I want to use my love for basketball to help others." Mrs. Evans paused, her fork hovering midair, her expression shifting to one of intrigue. "What do you have in mind, Jason?" "I've seen some kids at the park who don't have the same opportunities as I do. I was thinking maybe I could organize some free basketball clinics. Teach them some skills, give them a chance to play. It could be fun." A wide smile broke across Mrs. Evans' face, her eyes shining with pride. "What a wonderful idea. You have such a big heart, Jason. I know how passionate you are about basketball, and sharing that with others is a beautiful way to give back to your community." "Yeah, I think it would be great. I could even ask some of my friends to help out," he continued, enthusiasm bubbling over. "We could make it a whole event, maybe have a small tournament at the end." "Now you're really thinking," Mrs. Evans replied, her excitement mirroring his own. "I can help you with organizing it. We can reach out to the community center and see if they'd be willing to collaborate." Jason nodded vigorously, the idea taking root in his mind like a vibrant seed. He could already envision the event, the laughter, the joy, and the camaraderie among the kids as they learned and played together. It felt right, a way to turn his own experiences into something positive for others. After breakfast, Jason decided to hit the court. As he laced up his basketball shoes, he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the thrill of the game coursing through him. Stepping outside, he felt the crisp morning air against his skin and took a moment to gaze at the sky, a brilliant blue canvas dotted with wispy clouds. The park was just a few blocks away, and as he jogged there, he mentally mapped out the details of his plan. He envisioned posters announcing the clinic, the buzz of excited children, the sound of basketballs bouncing on the pavement, and the joy of teaching others the sport he loved. Arriving at the court, he found it buzzing with activity. A few kids were already shooting hoops, their laughter echoing around him. Jason felt a surge of excitement as he approached, ready to join in. "Hey, mind if I play?" he called, dribbling the ball effortlessly toward them. "Of course, show us what you've got," one of the boys replied, his competitive spirit evident. Jason joined the game, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline as he moved with fluidity, weaving through defenders and making shots. With each bounce of the ball, he felt lighter, more liberated, and the earlier shadows of uncertainty began to fade away. After a few intense games, Jason gathered the kids for a breather. "Hey, everyone. I have an idea," he began, gathering their attention. "I want to organize some free basketball clinics for kids in the community. Teach you all some skills, and maybe even have a little tournament at the end." Excited murmurs erupted among the group. "That sounds awesome." One girl exclaimed, "When do we start?" "I'm thinking next weekend," Jason replied, heart pounding with anticipation. "But I need your help. Spread the word to your friends. The more the merrier." As the kids eagerly discussed the idea, Jason felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. He was taking action, creating something meaningful out of his own experiences. This was his chance to connect with others, to share his passion, and to foster a sense of community. After a solid hour of playing, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon with warm hues of orange and pink. Jason felt a familiar tug of hunger and decided it was time to head home. He waved goodbye to the kids, their excited chatter ringing in his ears as he made his way back. When he arrived home, Mrs. Evans was in the living room, tidying up the space while a light dinner simmered on the stove. "How was the court?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with interest. "It was amazing," Jason replied, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I told the kids about the basketball clinics, and they loved the idea. I can't wait to get started." "That's fantastic, Jason. You've really inspired them, and I can see how much this means to you," she said, her smile warm and proud. Over dinner, Jason shared his vision in greater detail, explaining how he would like to create flyers, work with the community center, and engage local businesses for support. "I want this to be more than just basketball. I want to create a space where kids can feel safe, have fun, and make new friends." Mrs. Evans nodded, her heart swelling with admiration. "That's a noble goal, Jason. You're not only sharing your love for the game, but you're also helping to build a sense of community and belonging." As they finished dinner, Jason felt the anticipation bubbling within him. He grabbed a notepad and began jotting down ideas for the clinic, what skills he wanted to teach, how many days it would run, and what fun activities he could incorporate. Each stroke of the pen felt like a step toward his dreams coming to life. The following week was a whirlwind of preparation. Jason reached out to friends, inviting them to help, and together they created colorful flyers to post around the community. They visited the local community center, where they met with the director, who was enthusiastic about the project and offered the gym for the clinics. "I can't believe this is happening," Jason exclaimed, energy radiating from him. "It feels so good to be doing something positive." The director of the community center smiled. "You're doing a wonderful thing for the kids in this neighborhood, Jason. You have a gift for leadership, and I can see how passionate you are about making a difference." As the clinic day approached, Jason's excitement grew. He felt like a conductor preparing for an orchestra, each element coming together to create a beautiful symphony of activity and connection. The thought of seeing the kids play, learn, and enjoy the sport he loved filled him with an overwhelming sense of joy. Finally, the day of the clinic arrived. The sun shone brightly, a perfect day for outdoor activities. Jason arrived early, nerves fluttering in his stomach, as he set up cones and basketballs, transforming the court into a welcoming space for learning. Soon, kids began to arrive, their faces lit up with excitement. Jason welcomed them with open arms, handing out T-shirts that he had designed, each bearing a logo he created with Mrs. Evans' help. "Welcome to the first annual Jason's Basketball Clinic," he announced, his voice full of enthusiasm. As the kids donned their shirts, Jason felt a swell of pride. He led them through warm-ups, teaching them about teamwork and the importance of supporting one another. The energy on the court was electric, laughter echoing as they shared stories and played games. Throughout the day, Jason taught various skills, from dribbling to shooting to teamwork exercises. He noticed how some kids, initially shy and reserved, blossomed as they engaged with one another, their laughter filling the air. The clinic became a melting pot of personalities, and Jason marveled at how effortlessly friendships were forming. After a few hours of drills and games, Jason gathered the group for a break. He sat down with them under the shade of a tree, the sound of their chatter swirling around him. "Okay, everyone. You've all done an amazing job today," he began, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "But remember, basketball isn't just about skills. It's about having fun, making friends, and supporting each other both on and off the court." He then shared stories of his own experiences, the challenges he had faced, and how the love of the game had always brought him back to joy. The kids listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration, and he could see how much they appreciated his honesty. "Let's have a little competition," Jason announced, the spirit of excitement igniting once more. "We'll divide into teams and play a mini-tournament." Cheers erupted as they divided into teams, the energy palpable as they competed, with enthusiasm and laughter. Jason reveled in the joy of watching them play, their smiles illuminating the court. Every dribble, pass, and shot echoed with the triumph and community spirit. As the tournament unfolded, the court became a vibrant stage where laughter and friendly competition intertwined. The sound of sneakers squeaking on the polished surface mingled with cheers and shouts, creating a symphony of youthful exuberance. Jason stood at the sidelines, a wide smile stretching across his face as he observed the unfolding drama of the games. Each child played with heart, showcasing newfound skills while embodying the spirit of teamwork that Jason had hoped to cultivate. The first match kicked off with two teams filled with eager participants. Jason had organized the kids into groups based on their skill levels, ensuring everyone felt included and confident. As the whistle blew, the energy shifted. Players dashed across the court, dribbling and passing with a mix of intensity and glee. Jason could see a few of the quieter kids stepping up, their faces flushed with determination as they pushed themselves beyond their limits. "Come on, guys. You've got this," he cheered, his voice cutting through the chatter. His encouragement fueled their drive, and he felt a swell of pride in the positive atmosphere he had helped create. The first game ended in a nail-biting finish, with one team narrowly claiming victory. The celebration that followed was contagious, a collective joy that enveloped everyone. High fives were exchanged, and the players who lost remained gracious, congratulating their opponents with smiles and cheers. "Okay, everyone. Let's regroup and switch teams for the next round," Jason announced, feeling the excitement building again. The camaraderie among the kids was heartwarming, and he reveled in the sense of community forming right before his eyes. As the day progressed, Jason felt an even deeper connection to the children. He moved between the courts, offering tips, encouragement, and playful banter. He watched as the kids learned not only the fundamentals of basketball, but also the values of friendship and respect. Moments of laughter and support blossomed, with teammates helping each other up after a fall or sharing strategies during breaks. During a timeout, Jason gathered the kids around him, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You all are doing incredible. Remember, it's not just about winning. It's about having fun together and enjoying the game. Play hard, but don't forget to encourage one another." One young girl, Lily, raised her hand eagerly. "Can we have a dance-off during the break?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Jason chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Absolutely. Let's celebrate our hard work with some fun moves." They cleared a small space on the court, and Lily jumped in first, demonstrating her best dance moves. The other kids joined in, their laughter ringing out as they followed suit, spinning and twirling with joy. The impromptu dance party served as a reminder of the playful spirit that sports can foster. As the day drew to a close, the final game of the tournament began, the excitement palpable in the air. Families began to gather around the court, having heard about the event through word of mouth. Parents watched with pride as their children played, the sense of community growing stronger with each passing minute. Jason felt a thrill as he took a moment to step back, watching the scene unfold. The court was alive with energy. The sound of sneakers pounding against the hardwood, the rhythmic bounce of basketballs, and the joyous cheers of children. It was more than just a clinic. It was a celebration of community, of connection, and of love for the game. The final match was fierce, both teams giving their all as they battled for the championship title. Jason coached from the sidelines, shouting out encouragement and strategy, feeling every bit of the tension in the air. As the final seconds ticked away, the score was tied. With only a few moments left on the clock, Jason's heart raced. "Come on, team. You can do this," he shouted, his voice echoing across the court. In a last-ditch effort, a player named Marcus dribbled down the court, dodging defenders with agility. He made a swift pass to Lily, who was waiting at the three-point line. Time slowed as she squared her shoulders, took aim, and released the ball. It sailed through the air in an arc of hope and determination, the world around her fading into silence. Swish! The ball went through the net, and the court erupted into a frenzy of cheers. Jason jumped up, pumping his fist in the air as the victorious team celebrated, surrounded by their friends and family. "You did it. You all played so well," he exclaimed, rushing over to join the jubilant group. The excitement was contagious, and the kids embraced one another, their faces flushed with the thrill of victory. As the celebration subsided, Jason gathered everyone for a closing circle. "I am so proud of each and every one of you," he began, his heart swelling with emotion. Today was not just about basketball. It was about teamwork, resilience, and building friendships. You all showed what it means to be part of a community. The kids beamed at his words, the pride radiating from them evident. "Can we do this again?" Marcus asked, his eyes filled with eagerness. "Absolutely." "I'd love to make this a regular thing," Jason replied, feeling the same excitement surge within him. "Together, we can grow and learn, and maybe even invite more kids next time." As the day wound down, families began to leave, kids still buzzing with energy and joy. Parents approached Jason to express their gratitude for organizing the event, sharing how much it meant to their children. One mother, with a warm smile, said, "Thank you for bringing our community together. Our kids had a fantastic time, and it's great to see them engaged and active." Jason felt his heart swell with warmth and fulfillment. It was a team effort. "I couldn't have done it without the kids and their enthusiasm," he replied, appreciating the acknowledgement, but knowing it was the collective joy that truly mattered. Later that evening, as he returned home, Jason couldn't contain his excitement. The day had surpassed his wildest expectations. His phone buzzed with messages from friends, thanking him for the experience and expressing their eagerness to help with the next clinic. When he walked into the house, Mrs. Evans was waiting for him in the living room, her eyes lighting up as he entered. "Welcome home, champion. How was the clinic?" "It was incredible, Grandma. I can't believe how much fun everyone had. They loved the games and the dance-off, and we even had a tournament," Jason recounted, unable to hide the grin spreading across his face. Mrs. Evans laughed, her heart overflowing with pride. "I'm so proud of you, Jason. You turned a dream into reality today, and you created something beautiful for the community. This is just the beginning of something amazing." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I think I've found my purpose. I want to keep doing this, organizing clinics, helping kids discover the joy of basketball, and building friendships." "Then let's make it happen," she replied, her voice warm and encouraging. "You have the passion and the drive to inspire others. We can start planning the next event together." That night, as Jason lay in bed, the stars twinkling outside his window, he felt an overwhelming sense of hope. He was no longer just a kid chasing dreams on the court. He was becoming a leader, a mentor, and a source of inspiration for others. He drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future clinics, excited children, and the laughter that filled the air. Visions of new friendships, unforgettable memories, and a thriving community built around the love of basketball. As the weeks passed, Jason dedicated himself to the clinics with renewed fervor. He and Mrs. Evans worked tirelessly to promote the events, reaching out to local schools and community organizations, sharing their vision of inclusivity and joy. The response was overwhelming. Kids from all walks of life expressed interest, eager to join the fun. On the day of the second clinic, Jason arrived at the park filled with anticipation. He set up the court, his heart racing with excitement as he watched familiar faces from the last event arrive alongside new ones. The sight of so many eager children was exhilarating, and he couldn't wait to kick off the day. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Jason welcomed everyone, encouraging the kids to introduce themselves and share their favorite basketball memories. Laughter filled the air as stories of hilarious moments and inspiring victories emerged, building a sense of camaraderie even before the first drill began. "Okay, everyone, let's start with some warm-ups," he called out, leading them through stretching exercises. The kids mirrored his movements, their enthusiasm palpable. With every passing moment, Jason felt the bond between them strengthen. A tapestry of friendships woven together through their shared love for the game. The drills began, and Jason could see the joy on the kids' faces as they learned new skills. He incorporated fun challenges, like shooting competitions and relay races, ensuring that everyone was engaged and excited. During one drill, he noticed a young boy named Sam, who seemed hesitant and shy. As the other kids laughed and played, Sam lingered on the sidelines, looking uncertain. Jason approached him, kneeling down to meet his gaze. "Hey there, are you having fun?" Sam nodded, but his expression betrayed his apprehension. "I'm not really good at basketball," he admitted softly. "Guess what? It's not about being the best. It's about having fun and trying your hardest. Everyone here started somewhere, just like you. Want to join us? I bet you'll surprise yourself." Jason encouraged, a warm smile on his face. With a hesitant smile, Sam nodded, and Jason led him to the group.